Welcome to the Unmuted Podcast. This is a brand new episode. My name is Jeff. I'm your host, and we have just yet another fantastic topic, which is called Vision and Voice, the first equation for bold team leaders who need clarity, purpose, and a really good sleep. Yes, that is correct. And so we have a fantastic guest here today, Sheila Avari, and I'm going to bring her in just a minute. These episodes, as you all know, Unmuted is a podcast. We drop brand new episodes mainly every Thursday morning. So there's going to be a new one tomorrow. These episodes are on our website at GoScaleHR.com, also on our YouTube channel as well. So don't forget to subscribe, like, share, comment, please. Want to hear from you, and this is all about learning and building skills and capabilities. So without further ado, I just wanted to mention just a couple of comments first about this topic. So it's really about vision and voice, clarity, purpose, and a good sleep, which is always nice to have. But the first point that I want to make is really the power of vision. And so in my world, I've done this work, for many years, and I'm sure obviously our guest Sheila has done it for probably longer than me, but I am older, so don't get that idea that there's an age gap here. But anyway, so power vision. It's really, as you know, vision is really critical for any organization, big and small, and it's really a guide that guides team, inspires purpose, drives alignment, and really helps everyone that's part of an organization understand the why behind their work. I guess it's easier said than done. We're going to get into some of these sort of nuances in just a minute, but I just wanted to make that point that it's really about helping everyone understand the why behind their work. The second point, that I want to make is around the role of voice. So I was thinking about this, as we were sort of working on this episode and topic, is it's really about a unified voice that reflects the shared values of the organization, that fosters, consistency, collaboration, and then alignment within the team, but also beyond as well. So there's a lot there, but I just want to just say that the voice as to how you communicate is really, really important. Not just what you put on a wall, but it's also how you operate. So what you do every day, to how you treat your employees, how you treat each other, suppliers, customers, vendors, you name it, volunteers. And so I think it's complicated, but it's also simple as well. And I think Sheila Avari is here to help us break it all down. And so she's our guest today. And so Sheila, I just want to welcome you to the podcast.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm delighted. And your opening was a perfect setup for our conversation.
Perfect.
Thanks for having me.
So let's dive into it. So, before we get into, some questions, can you just tell us what you do?
Yeah, for sure. I would be glad to. I started my company Fusion in 2007, and since then I've really developed a global expertise on how to put people over everything. And that was something I had to learn over time, that they are at the heart of every decision a leader is doing and making. My role and goal really is in a few key ways, I would say. I work with bold leaders, number one, first ingredient in the recipe for success in developing, engaging, rewarding, and attracting the very best people to their teams to have business growth year over year. That is my mission in my business. And when I think about most of my clients, they're CEOs of small, medium businesses or heads of HR or heads of marketing for multinational firms of all sectors. So, but the titles aside, what I've learned over time is they're all wearing the same hat. And you talked about sleep, right? And what keeps them awake are the same reasons. And you may know this, the viewers might know this, but we know that the top reason a CEO stays awake is, do I have the right people in the right roles at the right time? A head of HR might want to make sure that, are people doing meaningful work, and are they being recognized for the meaningful work? Do they understand how their contribution drives collective success? A marketing team wants to know that people really believe in the employer brand so they can pull through that story, right? They're all common issues or worries, but that's what I mean by the way they wear the same hat. So I always think that this is like sort of the trifecta, and where I get to do my best work is in helping them assess and improve their employee experience. They're responsible for creating, and The second part, which is what we're going to talk about, is helping them establish their vision and voice, giving them clarity and credibility for here's how we are going to achieve this together. And you mentioned this, it's so hard to do. That this together we can do it approach is age old, but at the speed that we're working, competition, digital disruption, AI, it is getting even harder to stick to that vision and actually deliver on what we said we would do. And that's where I'm seeing more and more the best performing teams are using their vision and voice as the anchor.
Okay, so very interesting. I like how frame that. And so, speaking of vision and voice, why are these concepts, so critical, for empowering teams?
Yeah, I think, and I'm seeing this more and more as people are more discerning about their workplace. We have leaders who, I'll use an example of a technical leader at an engineering firm. So, example, aluminum mining company that I had a chance to work with. Best engineers on the planet, best computer scientists on the planet, and now they're also in people leadership roles. Voice and vision is not always easy, not always comfortable, not definitely not natural for some leaders.
Right,
Right.
right, right.
And even when it is, still hard to talk about. So, why is it important? It gives clarity for every level of leader. It doesn't matter who you are in the organization. And when I say clarity, I'm talking about who are we as a team? What is that identity? I say that when you have a clear identity, that is at the heart of what a high performing team needs to have. That's the foundation. How do we work together? Really simple guiding principles for how we drive success. Anything I share today won't be complicated, won't be complex, I should say, but will be critical for how a team operates. This is where clarity helps you establish what is the employee experience? What is it like to work here? So all of those pieces are what I would say are the beginnings of what the employer brand is and what we start pulling through. So that's the first C, clarity. The second one, I would call it connecting. How do we connect the dots? People need to know how their little piece of the puzzle affects your piece of the
Right.
puzzle. And I know people say, oh, of course, it sounds obvious. It's so often the broken link, right? And when we know when I know how my work affects your work, it gives me purpose. It gives me a reason to wake up and show up for work, right? Why am I even here? What's my role? Is my contribution even make a difference? And related to my work, I do a study called the Ideal Workplace Study, where ideal is inclusion, diversity, equity, access, and leadership. And I've asked 1,500 American and Canadian workers exactly about this. Less than half of employees have reported that they understand how their work supports the bigger picture. And
Yeah, and I
it's
actually believe
it's
that.
a yeah, sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I would like as you were talking, there were two things that sort of came up. One was the idea that clarity of team and communication. Like I always go back to a sports teams, like professional sport teams. So I grew up as an athlete, and I follow hockey
Mhm.
and various other sports. And I think professional sports teams are probably one of the best at being able to actually do that because there's no margin for error, right? So when you're
Yes.
on the ice and you're performing and obviously need to know what your roles are, how you work as a team, all these different things. And the second thing was around there are many industries and companies that are not I call it not sexy. And I go, one would be, like an insurance company, right? So people
Yeah.
don't so wake up every day and go, I want to be an insurance broker today. And, that doesn't usually happen. And so the work itself is not overly sort of interesting and exciting. Like the product isn't that exciting. But what I've seen some companies do is they really nail down what is the real reason why we actually exist, which is to help
Yes.
save, to save lives you know,
Yes.
protect assets of people, save lives, financial safety, all these things. And then when you start to sort of bring that into, then you go, oh, okay, I'm here for a reason, right? Instead of it just
Yes.
being my job, marketing coordinator, HR director, what have you. So it's really interesting. I just want to ask, how do you define a team's vision and voice? So getting into the sort of
Yeah, for sure. This is such an in-person conversation, by the way. It gets me super excited. And I mean that because the togetherness part of building a vision and voice is really where I find the magic happens. And my role isn't to define your team's vision and voice. That's not
right.
possible. My role and my value is in leading what I call vision and voice workshop for lead teams. And I'm going to share parts of that today so people can pick up on doing some of this on their own. But it's for the team to identify who they are and figure out who they are and decide how they're going to get there. And I've had teams who have been intact for years surprise themselves on who they thought they were or who their peers thought they were. So this type of an activity is a really refreshing thing to do at any time of year, particularly at the start of a year is good, but by all means, it could be something you revisit. But it's one of my favorite parts of my work because I can see how the impact is so significant. And in terms of how I help leaders define it, it's so multifaceted. And your intro really hit on some of the big pieces of the conversation. Even though it's called vision and voice, there's so many sub bullets under both of those pieces, right? One is on who is the customer? And you will be surprised at the number of people who don't know who their customer is, or they might have way too many, or it might be far too narrow. So we take a long time to pinpoint and decide on who the customers are and what their perceptions are of the team, of the brand. And that's a huge benchmark or starting point, I will say, to say, this is how our customers are viewing us now. In a year from now, what do we want that to sound like? And it's an eye-opening, but also inspirational visual or conversation piece. So that's one part of it. We discuss and question company values. You mentioned that
Okay.
other V word. It has to be more than a poster on the wall. How are they real? How are they measurable? Where did those words come from? And since they're part of the company DNA, how are we going to make it real for our team? And that practical, actionable piece becomes a real win. And I have seen how teams have really come together when they get clarity around that. We take a long time to make sure we understand what the company's strategy is. So I'll give you an example. If I'm working with an operations team within a pharma company, let's say, it's not enough for me just to help them figure out what their vision and voice is within their world. We have to get a good sense of what is the company working on this year or next year. Is there a merger? Is there a new drug launch? Right? Whatever the case is, what are those anchors? That will affect what you can do and say. Because that goes to the next piece. Vision and voice requires having clear goals, right? So, what do we wish we can achieve? And in this sort of workshop environment, I give a lot of free rein to it and say, if you had unlimited time and budget this year, what do you wish you could do? And Jeff, the sticky note walls that we get with just that is so fascinating. And I have heard people say this is so helpful. What a good way of looking at all of what we can do. And then we decide collectively on what is reasonable, what will have the biggest impact. And these types of activities and exercises are what I need teams to be doing more often to stay fresh and stay connected. And then those are a lot. But then how
That
do
is a
you
lot,
make it?
yeah.
We walk away with measurement. And it's not always an agreeing workshop. We can't always agree, but there's always an alignment. We do walk away saying, this is where we've landed. This is the talk track or the consistent message we need to walk away with to tell the rest of the organization. That's the win.
And I know from personal experience that this type of exercise is a lot of work. It's very intensive. And so it takes time. So it's not like you're going to spend 32 minutes with Sheila and then you'll have kumbaya. That's not
No
the
way.
message here at all. But I'm just, I think, what you've kind of, laid out is that it's a very methodical, committed way of doing this. So once you get through that and you've got something that is, clear and you've been able to help an organization sort of figure that out, the vision and voice, what are, so getting into more of the practical side of things, how do you,
Mhm.
well, what practical steps can organizational leaders take to make their vision and voice part of the daily employee experience? Because ultimately, it needs to filter down to the rest of the organization. So, are there a couple of things that are kind of most impactful that you've seen in your work?
Yeah, and 100%. And I will just touch on briefly. This is a lot of work that only certain type of leader will go after. And in fact, I just had a call with a prospect asking about, I need help with getting some clarity. And I defined this as a deer in headlights situation. And I have seen the leaders look up and say, whoa, 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 is that the vision that we've just landed on? Because now it's real, right? Now it's getting ready to make itself public, and now you are accountable. So
Right.
yes, it is a lot of investment and a lot of thought. This is not just your average 2 hour workshop, but it has this lifelong value, right?
Right. Right. Right.
And
Right.
how does the value come? Well, it's in how you act on it, right? It's more than just having a team in a room building this out. The one big lesson I'll say I learned, or advice, the best advice I picked up over the years, I was consulting at a luxury beauty company. A new CEO was in position. And he used a phrase called leaders in every chair. There are leaders in every chair. And the point of that was we don't wait for role models in the organization to demonstrate values, demonstrate behaviors, demonstrate the vision. Whether you're a people manager, senior leader, or junior entry level individual contributor, you have a role in this. This is not just for one group to pick up, for sure. It won't last. So that is the biggest takeaway that I remind everyone that once this is out there, once there's a vision and voice out there, what's your role in picking up on it? Otherwise, it will fall flat, right? So when we have a vision and voice, the real work really starts. And that's the hardest part, right? I always remind leaders about their responsibility of regular communication. So, as part of this, we look at what are your tried and true communications vehicles? For some, it might be a town hall or it might be one on one groups, or I really encourage the one on one and the small group
Right.
meetings where it's every conversation. But then I also check with what communications vehicles should we try and test and see where how else we can reach new people and get connected with people who might not be part of the conversation, but we need to bring them in.
Right. Right. Right.
So it's a really intentional testing period to make sure people get it.
Right. Okay.
That's for sure. The other one that I push leaders on, and it's not natural for everyone, is celebrating all the wins and celebrating the learnings when a team fails, right? We don't always recognize that, even though we say that we want to be a culture that a company that drives that. We have to keep showing up for that. You're nodding. I think you know what I mean when I say that.
Yeah, I think there's a negative connotation about failure. Obviously,
Yeah.
I think it's been popularized and socialized, and I don't think people really get it. I think what it means is, in my world, is that if you took a calculated risk, a thoughtful risk, and it didn't work out, the way it's planned, there is learning there. There's learning from that, and it's important that as an organization, as a group of people, as a team, that you actually spend the time to go through that and then actually evaluate that and figure out, okay, so this is what we did and why, this is what happened, this is what we did wrong. So what can we learn from it? And then maybe do something different or better next time. That's really
Yeah.
where the organizational, development happens, really happens,
Yeah.
right? So
But it has to
that's my
happen
thing about failure.
consistently so people believe it, right? People have to believe that failing was okay because they are sharing the failure and the learning from the failure, and that's what I mean by that has to happen
Yeah.
consistently.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we create a different sort of culture that goes against what we set out to do. And how do we have to document this, right? So out of a vision and voice workshop, I will always create a voice guide, and
Right.
this helps with consistent messaging. And it sounds
Yeah.
so obvious again, but it really helps people see where we stand, how we should speak. I'll give you an example of an HR team.
Mhm.
HR does internal communications on compensation or performance or new benefits or new learning program. But for the average non HR person, they just need to see that in similar tone and style and length so that they see how it's connected. More
Yeah.
importantly, so that they understand how their employer is investing in them. Right? That needs to come out strong. A voice guide really helps the non-writer and the non-communicator at all levels understand it so that their role shows the value and stays consistent with the brand. So that I find one of the most or well used tools that we provide to leaders who want this clarity and consistency for the year.
Yeah, because I think they need the constant reminder, but there needs to be a standard, obviously, that they can go to. Um,
Yeah,
so obviously, all of this work is great work, but then you have to measure, impact, right? And I think that obviously is a very big part of this process. And so,
yeah,
how can organizations measure the impact of having a strong, aligned vision and voice on team dynamics and overall performance? And so,
yeah.
maybe a couple things, one or two things that you can sort of recommend.
I know, because it's touchy-feely, right? And so it's so intangible.
Mm.
But you asked for one or two things.
Mm.
Having a vision and voice, no, I know, vision and voice means nothing if it's not directly connected to the values. And you can see how those are demonstrated through behaviors, also something that we would need to cover. So that's a qualitative that you can just witness and observe and recognize and celebrate, to our
Yeah.
point earlier. Are people raising their hands to take on new projects, interested in stretching themselves for something new because they want to learn? Are they that's a sign of engagement? Are people coming into work? If there's not an absenteeism problem, that's are people present in the moment? Right? So those are qualitative pieces that anyone can just take note of. And another piece I'll add is when an organization does the stay interview, are you getting a good, honest pulse and listening into the feedback? A stay interview is a very good practice for keeping your finger on the pulse and
Yeah.
listening into what your employees are looking for or missing. On the quantitative side, and I think we always need this as HR practitioners, what does productivity look like? Are we hitting our goals on time and on budget as we said we would? Or do we have an employee retention issue? So there are numbers like that we should be tracking. All of that is directly linked to whether or not I feel connected to the vision on the team, whether or not I've built trust in my leader who's communicating this vision to me. There is a one-for-one correlation there. So those are some examples of how you can measure impact and success.
Yeah, I've always really tried to connect the work to business outcomes, whether that be, like, for example, like every for-profit company is aiming to, like like increase revenue, or like increase profit margins, better, like increase like number of customers. Maybe they measure customer sentiment and engagement. Maybe they want to go into a new marketplace. So, all of these things, and then there's also metrics on the scalability, right? So, are you increasing the number of revenue dollars per staff member, right? That's really what comes down to scaling a business. And so I've seen this kind of work. If you get people aligned, all of those things, get better, but you have to measure it, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
And the
really important.
examples you gave are good examples of goals. I didn't give specific ones depending on a team, but yes, all the sales metrics
Yeah, yeah,
are
yeah.
good place to start. And are those going in the direction? That's why the list of goals or the what we want to achieve is so critical for what this vision and voice
Mhm.
outcome needs to be.
Yeah. So we talked about a lot, and we could probably go on for another, 10 hours, which I would love to do, but I don't think anybody's going to watch 10 hours of a podcast. So, but I do have one last question for you. If there's one
Okay.
thing that, listeners can take away from anything that we've talked about today, what would that one thing be?
Yeah, I think for those of us in HR, as HR advisors, I would want people to take away that as HR advisors, we need to be wearing the marketing hat. I think that gives us the healthy lens of what we need to do and why we need to do it. We are strategic HR leaders with a marketing mindset. We need to think like accountable marketers. This will add tremendous value to what we do within the HR world. It
Yeah, I
brings
agree.
us more to the table, to have our seat at the table. It will secure your seat. It will secure your CEO's ear when you can bring the lens of here's our look at people over everything and how it shapes our marketing story, our branding story. So I always like to look at treating our work at the company as the next big product. Why would anyone want to work here and stay here? Right. So that's what I want people to take away from this, because that is the storyline in your vision and your voice in what you
Yeah.
want to.
Or you become best friend with the head of marketing, which is what I do. So whenever
Also
I,
good. And you
so
need to
previous
do that
life,
for sure.
yeah, the previous life when I used to work in like, inside, the three people that I would be best friends with first: CFO, CMO, and the head of sales. There you go.
Yes.
But
Yes.
again, I think it's all
Well,
very important.
which is why right off the top I said CEO, CHRO, CMO. That I agree with you. And you said CFO. It's true. All of them should be thinking with this sort of joint lens or wearing the same hat, if you want to
Of
use that
course. Yeah.
analogy. Ultimately thinking about how do we put people over everything and give them the vision and voice that they deserve for coming into work and delivering their best every day.
Fantastic. So, Sheila, I just want to thank you for being here, imparting your knowledge.
Thanks,
And,
Jeff.
you know, if you're ever watching, we will drop in the episode summary as to how you can connect with Sheila and the work that she does. She's based in the Toronto area, but she works, globally, like most of
That's
us
right.
do. So once again, Unmuted Podcast is a podcast about work, HR, talent, technology, and so all of our episodes live on our website, HR.com. Also on YouTube as well. So please like our video, share your comment, please share. And so, Sheila, once again, thank you for being here.